I handed in my book. If you follow me over on TikTok, you saw that I was like deep in the deadline mode trenches. It was touch and go for a minute there as to whether I was going to come out of it with my sanity. But I did, I think. Today is Saturday. I turned in my book on Monday, meaning I sent it to my publisher. I said, here's my draft of my book. And that is what will be my 4th published novel. I still don't have a pub date for you yet. We need to confirm that once we've looked at the book and have decided on a timeline for the edits. And then I'll be able to tell you when it's coming out, what the title is, all of that. Very exciting. However, for now, I know what my next steps are, and I wanted to share them with you. My intention for 2025 is to vlog a lot more of this process, because I appreciate that sometimes I like dip in and I'm like, I'm doing this, and then I don't say anything until I've done it. And I think because I'm a full-time writer now, I have the bandwidth to vlog things and to share them with you. And so that's one of my intentions for 2025. So now that I've handed in my book, what are the next steps? What am I doing? I wanted to share that with you, tell you what you can expect in the upcoming vlogs that I'm going to be putting out. Like I said, this will be my 4th published novel. If you watched my goals video from a few weeks ago for 2025 and how I did on my 2024 goals, you know that my goals are quite ambitious for this year. I want to write and edit 2 books this year, which is more than I've ever done before. However, I feel really confident that I have the tools and the motivation and the resources to be able to do that. Am I going to get a lot of downtime in between things? No, I'm not, but that's okay. This is my job now. I say it's my job. I'm a full-time writer. I don't call myself a full-time author because a lot of my income comes from freelance writing. So it's not like I'm going to be working on my novels full-time. But I don't have a day job to work around, so it makes it easier. I have turned in what I'm referring to as SP4. That is the draft stage. I call it SP4 because I write under Sam Parks, and it will be my 4th published novel. If you're new here, SP1 is Summer House in Santorini, SP2 is Summer Wedding in Santorini, SP3 is You've Got Chainmail, and SP4 is Redacted. I actually know the title for SP5 as well because I'm under contract for that one too. So let's talk about SP4. I've just turned that in. What are the next steps for SP4? I turned it in on 20th of January. I think I'm getting my edits back kind of mid to late February, the 3rd week of February. And then I will have an yet to be defined amount of time to work on structural edits. That will largely depend on how much needs doing. I'm expecting it will need a lot doing, but it will be a shorter window than it might have been for You've Got Chainmail, for example, because I now don't have a day job, so I can do things a little bit faster. But I also want to make sure I give it plenty of time, so I won't know what that timeline is going to look like until I have my meeting with my editor in February. So SP4 will need to undergo structural edits, so I will rewrite sections of the book, I will change things about characters, change things about the direction of the story. I mean, in You've Got Chainmail, I completely cut characters, subplots, I added in new things. There's a lot that goes into the structural edit. I've never had a structural edit that was easy. I hate structural edits. They're very difficult, but they make the book so much better. I would never publish a book, even self-published, without doing a structural edit with an editor. So that will go through structural edits. Then that will go back to my editor, who will hopefully come back and say, yes, great, we're good to move on with this. Could come back with more structural edits. Also fine. Once structural edits are done, so once we agree, okay, this is holistically the story that we want to be telling, then we'll move into line edits. Line edits are like line level things. So you should consider splitting this into 2 chapters. You need to up the tension in this scene. Not enough description of X in this place. That kind of thing. And again, I'll know timelines for that once the structural edits are done. So SP4 is now going through the publishing pipeline. That's great. SP5, I am also under contract for. And this is where things get tricky, because when you're trying to write multiple books in a year, you have to kind of alternate what you're working on. So I'm not getting my edits back on SP4 until mid-Feb. If I want to write and edit 2 books this year, I need to start planning SP5 and do the planning portion of that project before I get my edits back on SP4. I know already roughly what I want that storyline to look like, but I need to plan out the character arcs. I need to plan out the plot in more detail. I will need to produce a synopsis before my edits for SP4 come back. So SP4, next step is structural edit. SP5, next step is planning. And then later in the year, I'll want to work on SP6. but I don't yet know what that's going to look like. I actually don't have any idea what that's going to look like. I have ideas, but I haven't chosen one to work on. I need to focus on getting SP5 done first, but I will probably need to start planning that after I turn in the draft for SP5 while I'm waiting on my structural edits for that. So do you see how it creates that sort of alternating pattern? I'm just going to put on the screen like roughly what that would look like across a year. So January, I was writing SP4 still, and January into February, planning SP5. February into March and April will be structural edits on SP4. Then April into May, June will be drafting SP5. So you can kind of see now what it would look like. These are timelines I've made up. These might not be correct. I need to wait and see what my editor says about SP4. So this will not be the final timeline, but it's just an illustration of how I anticipate the year will go and kind of the amount of downtime that I'm going to have, because I do have periods of the year where I need to be very focused on other things. So I'm going away for a few weeks in June. I've got family coming for a while in December, various things like that. So that is an ambitious schedule, especially around freelance work, just being a person with a life. And I think that last year I discovered that I am very much an extrinsic motivation girly. So I have a lot of intrinsic motivation, but it's not something that I naturally adhere to very well. Extrinsic motivation works a lot better for me. And I think that people think deadlines are sufficient as extrinsic motivation. I think that deadlines, I think of that more as like extrinsic enforcement. I think the motivation side of things is, what am I creating? What input am I creating that is going to inspire the work that's needed in order to achieve things? Whereas deadlines are just defining a timeline. And last year I learned that for me, courses and learning are a really powerful form of extrinsic motivation. So I know I shared with you guys that I did the Reedsy How to Write a Novel course. I partnered with the Reedsy team to talk to you about that. And I'm really excited because they're bringing a lot more new things into 2025 that I'm excited to participate in. They are kindly sponsoring this portion of the video, but this is something that I'm really excited to bring to you because I'm planning on participating in it myself. And that is their event series. So Reedsy Learning is the learning arm of Reedsy as a platform and a resource. And Reedsy Learning are offering an event series this year where every other month there's going to be a sort of half-day conference around a specific subject. They've released the event subjects, and the next couple of topics are incredibly relevant to what I will be doing at that point in the year. So for example, next weekend as of filming this, so the 2nd of February, they've got a half-day conference on how to plan your novel, just as I'm going to be working on planning SP5. And then in April, when I'll be working on structural edits, they've got an event called Novel Revision, going beyond the first draft. So that's obviously going to be really relevant to what I'm working on at the time. I think that Reedsy do an incredible job of prioritizing valuable actionable insights, actually giving practical tools and information and tactics and craft advice that writers can go and apply immediately to whatever they're working on. The events can be purchased individually, but they also are launching the membership, or I think it ends up working out at 60% off for the 12-month membership where you get access to all the events. I'm super excited for 2025 with Reedsy. I'm excited by the lineup, but I also am excited because I really trust them as a source of expertise and learning that I know is going to be relevant to what I write, and that I also know from experience is going to be motivating to me in my writing practice. I'll have links in the description both to the events that I mentioned and also to the event series membership. And thank you so much to Reedsy for sponsoring this part of the video. So I think that those events are going to be really important for me throughout the year to kind of periodically create that extrinsic motivation, the way that the course did at the end of last year. If you are interested in that course, by the way, they do like new cohorts of that all the time, so I will have a link to that in the description as well. But I think being able to revisit that course material and having kind of a regular series of events is going to be what I need to feel consistently inspired. I do have other things in my life that I do to generate that inspiration. I find that being around the people that I love is a really big part of that. My friends are the funniest smartest, cleverest people that I know, and being around them inspires me to write funny, interesting characters. I find that getting outside, walking my dog, traveling, these are all things that inspire me. But I feel like sometimes those things can be a little bit out of my control. Obviously, going on my dog walks is pretty within my control, but like traveling, costs money. Hanging out with my friends depends on their availability. Two of my best friends are getting ready to go away for a whole month, so I'm not going to get to see them, which is very rude if you ask me. But I'm trying to be really intentional about inserting things into my writing practice that aren't just habits of actually writing, but also are providing that extrinsic motivation and inspiration for me. And like I said, another important next step for me is to try to share all of this with you, because I find that this is a really important source of extrinsic motivation for me. I am saying to you, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And so that makes me more likely to do it. And if I'm sharing it with you, if I'm recording it to share with you, that to me feels inspiring, because I think sometimes writing can be a really lonely practice. And even if you're doing writing sprints and you're with a writing group, stuff like that, you're not always sharing the details of what it is that you're doing. And so I feel like being able to share that with you, it makes me feel like someone's watching, someone's paying attention. And maybe that's a bit weird to say, but it's a reality of what I find inspiring and what I find motivating. Like I said, if there's anything specific that you want to see in my writing vlogs this year, let me know in the comments. And if you don't want to miss any of that content, be sure to hit subscribe. Let me know what your 2025 goals are as well, because I'm sitting here telling you mine, but I want to be able to support you on yours too. So tell me what they are. What do you want to write this year? What do you want to read this year? What do you want to make? As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.